who are really successful and they're really wonderful. They're typically my SI leaders, like Sarah Steely up here. And they talk to you all about what they do to manage their time as successful upperclassmen. But this time, I just wanted to do it on my own. So you're going to have to bear with me again. And I'm hoping that it's around an hour. If I realize that it's going to be way longer, I'm just going to cut it short, so you'll have to bear with me there. But I think it's important. Okay, how many of you all would say you're truly great at managing your time? Okay, I like some confidence in here. That's really good. I'm not going to call you out on it though, even though I really want to because I'm a therapist and I already did. Not going to do that. But if you're really great at it, I still want you to pay attention and think about other things you can say to help other people. Before I forget, there are a few things I want to mention. One, the Harding Organizational Fair. I'm hoping you've heard about it. If you ate in the calf today and you have like a big turkey leg, it's one of the reasons why. But that's going to be out on the front lawn tonight, starting at 6 o'clock. And there are like big inflatable games, which is really cool, and fun carnival food. And you can check out all of the resources, or not the resources, all the organizations that are available to you as Harding students. Raise your hand if you're a freshman. Neat, welcome. So I really encourage you all to go to that and take advantage of it. Okay, so since only one of you, I believe, raised your hand for being good at managing your time, we're going to talk about it. This is a pretty necessary skill. Okay, in undergrad, I was a history and political science major, and I'm going to be completely honest with you about a few things. When I was in your seat, quite literally, I used to come to these things, and they were called learning enhancement workshops. And I always sat right there, where you're sitting with the white shirt and black stripes. That was like my seat during it, so you got some wisdom right there. Good job. And, but don't do what I did when I sat in that seat, because I did not listen. I did not listen at all to what was told to me, bless you. And I really wish that I would have. Because in undergrad, I procrastinated all the time. Truly all the time. I was an SI leader, I was a tutor, I was like a good student from all appearances and then grade-wise, but I did not manage my time to the point that when it came my senior year, are any of you all seniors in here? Okay, I got one. Beloved Stephanie in the front row, cheering me on. When you get to be a senior, you're going to have like a senior capstone project or like pre-student teaching or some really big deal to say, hey, look, I'm a big girl or a grown man, and I know what I did in college, and I'm going to prove it to you. So for me, that was writing a monstrosity of a research paper. And I had to do a history and political science paper, which is fine. And I wrote, because I sucked at this, at time management. I wrote a 32-page paper in 48 hours, and I still do not think my body has physically recovered from all of the toxins I put in it to keep myself alive. And that was 6 years ago? That was 6 years ago. And I'm not kidding. Like, my friends had almost like a meal train of bringing me Sonic drinks and chili cheese dogs, which is, by the way, not sustainable. So don't do that. But I totally regret not taking that project seriously and not taking, and like it was fine and I did it, but it wasn't okay and it wasn't as good as it could have been. And then I went to grad school and I had 2 graduate degrees. And when I was in grad school, I also worked full time and I had like a social life and a family. And even then, like it was hard for me because I never got the discipline of learning how to manage my time. And it sort of hit me like a bus and I had 30,000 things to do and only a few days to do it. And it was overwhelming. And so all of the things that I cared about, my relationships, my friends, bless you, all of these things that I loved took a back seat because I didn't know how to manage my time. And I had to totally focus on work or totally focus on school. And we're not called to do that. I know you're at Harding to get a college degree, that is important. But you also need to be here for the friends and the social aspects and the community and the spiritual growth and all of the opportunities. I want you all to have fun. Your life should not be boring or dull or spent in a textbook. And as the Director of Academic Resources, I want to tell you that, you know I'm speaking truth to you. But if you can learn how to manage your time, you can actually learn to have fun and do it. It's a life skill. And if you don't, then you get stressed. And as the therapist in me, you get stressed out, that also sucks. And it's the worst. And then it's just a spiraling effect. So one of the main things when I teach a stress management seminar, which I will later in the semester, and that one's my favorite one, is to learn how to manage your time. I'm sure it's week 4. How many of you all had tests this week? How many of you all felt a little stressed out this week? Yeah, me too. If I was an octopus, I would be raising all those things up because it stinks, even from the faculty standpoint. Okay, because we get stressed. Oftentimes, yeah, exactly, all over them. I see what you did there. The visuals in my head and it's not moving. But all of those things happen, and that can't happen. So we're going to talk about some things and as students that you all need to be doing to manage your stress. I know some of your professors for extra credit are expecting you to hand in notes. And so just take them, but I realize there are a lot of words up there, so just paraphrase if you need to. One thing you all need to be aware of in a class, and you might not know this, or you might think this is crazy, but on the faculty side of things, every time we teach a class, and I've adjuncted American government before, when we do our syllabi, we have to turn it in to the provost office. And there is this thing called a credit hour calculator. And when you take a class, you're either taking it for 2 hours of credit, or 3 hours of credit, 4 hours of credit, etc. So if you're in Chem 121, that is a 4-hour class. Okay, and I know a lot of you are, I'm sorry. If you are in most of Hardy's classes, those are 3-hour classes, and then there are a few that are 2, like kinesiology. Okay, and we have to say this class is worthy of this credit hour amount. And in this credit hour calculator, we say they have to read all of these textbooks, study this amount, they have to write these papers, they have to do these projects, give these presentations, take this amount of tests, and there's actually a mathematical formula to determine how long each of those things should take you. So for every class that you're in, a professor has had to make it hard enough to where you are supposed to be spending 2 hours per hour class for every 1 hour you're in class. That means your typical, except for a freshman Bible, because it's a 2-hour class. But with all of your other classes, if you meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, say American National Government with Lord Klein at 12 o'clock, if you're in that class, then for every day you're in class, you're supposed to have to study 2 hours outside of that. That's a lot of time, by the way. So if you're a freshman, let's say you have the average 15-hour load, the Harding expectation is for you to be studying 30 hours a week. That's a lot. That's 45 hours, which is more than a typical work week. But if you look at the school, like you do a job, it seems far more attainable. Some of your classes, though, are a whole lot harder than that. Raise your hand if you are in Chem 121. Sorry. That class is more of like a 4-to-1 ratio or a 3-to-1 ratio. If you go to SI regularly, that helps you out. Or if you get tutoring for that class, that helps you out a little bit. But that class, if you only study for 2 hours for every 1 hour, you're not going to do very well because it's hard. Some other classes, and I'm not going to say which ones are really easy, but some other classes you can get away with it a little bit. But you do need to bear in mind that as faculty, we have to plan our classes that way. And in high school, many of you never had to study a day in your life. Or you could just turn on the TV, watch Netflix, and glance through your notes, and you were done, and you got an A or a B, and you're smooth sailing. And that's great. I'm happy for you. But when you're in college, it's a little bit different. Some of you, though, came with a whole bunch of AP credits, and you know how to study, and your study skills just have to take a slight pivot as opposed to a huge leap of change. But wherever you are on that spectrum, you do need to take it seriously, and you need to know how to study. And if you don't, come to the Center for Student Success and we'll help you with that. Also, some of you get in these habits where you either can only focus for about 5 to 10 minutes and then you're done. And so you consider studying like sitting there with your textbook open and your phone in your hand. Like, I hate to break it to you, but that isn't studying at all. And some of you get in this like tunnel vision zone, and you'll go to the library or to Midnight Oil or Starbucks or just somewhere, and you'll study for hours without ever taking a break. And your brain is just exhausted, and you cannot remember what you did the first hour and a half of studying because you never gave your time to process, your brain time to process that. And that can't happen. The most successful people study for 40 to 50 minutes and then take a 10 to 15 minute break. Because here's what happens. How many of you all, by show of hands, sometimes get your best and most brilliant ideas when you're driving or you're walking around or you're in the shower? And it's just like when your brain's off and you just have an epiphany about something. That happens to me all the time. So much, or like when you're laying in bed and I'll wake up and be like, oh, stink, I need to do this. That's because for the first time all day, my brain is not like going crazy with things. And it had time to actually calm down and take a break and not have to think critically about something. Some of you who are just freshmen may not have experienced that like go, go, go all the time feeling yet, but I guarantee you, when you get your upper level classes, you will. But you have to train your brain, it's conditioning. You train your muscles when you're an athlete. You train all of these kind of things, your body to physically do things. It's muscle memory. Have you ever seen Karate Kid? You know what I'm talking about. Okay? But your brain's the same way. So you have to condition it to be able to focus solidly for that period of time. And you have to allow yourself to take a break. Some of you, though, are going to struggle with this because you're not disciplined enough after a 10 to 15-minute break to go back to work. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well. Another thing that you really need to be doing in order to manage your time the best, did the sound just go up? Sad day. Okay. Another thing you need to be doing, and if you can't hear me in the back, you're going to have to tell me. I'll try to yell, but I taught classes today and I teach classes tomorrow, so my voice might not be the best. But another thing you absolutely have to do is start with your most challenging subjects. While your brain is still fresh and you can just be more alert and awake, start with those harder subjects even though you don't want to. Because by the time that you've been studying or working on things for hours, you're not going to be as clear, you're going to be a little bit foggy. And then if you've waited to save your toughest, most disdained class for last, your thought process is going to be something like this. Nope. And you're going to put it away. And like that isn't helpful. That isn't helpful for anyone. But if you've done your hardest subject first, and you've knocked it out, and you've done your next hardest subject next, at the end when you're tired, you can look at something that's really easy, and you can still say, nope, but the next morning, because it's really easy, you can get up and do it after chapel with no problem. Or at the end of that day, because it is easy, you're like, you know what, I can spend 20 more minutes and just knock this out and it's fine. But I have seen far too many students just continue to procrastinate and avoid the task that they really don't want to do until the very end. And they're like, I'm going to do that one last. I'm going to gain momentum. And that is not how the majority of you work. And then you just avoid it, and you procrastinate on it, and then it's late, or then you just don't study for it, and then you end up shooting yourself in the foot, because then you have an even worse grade, and then you don't want to do it again, and you end up getting a C in a class you could have gotten an A in, or an F in a class you could have gotten a C in. And that doesn't need to happen. Partying's way too expensive to make silly mistakes like that, especially when you know better. Okay? Another thing you need to do is always think about what your goals actually are. It is very idealistic, and for some of you very attainable, to be like, I'm going to get a 4.0 every semester. That's great, and I would love it if you did that. But if you know that that isn't really what your priorities are, and this semester if you're a freshman, you just want to make a 3.0, but you also want to join a social club, and you want to find a friend group, that's very applaudable. Go for it. But know what your goals are. And make sure that they're reasonable. And also, when I say know what your goals are, don't set your goals too low. Don't just say, I only have to have a 2.0, C's get degrees. Don't do that. Even though it's factually true, you're paying for knowledge, and you're paying for wisdom and insight. And so you want to soak it up. I think you want that as much as you can. And if you graduate with a 2.0 and you just need to walk across that stage, that's awesome. Because when you're walking across, no one's going to know the difference between you and a student who made a 4.0, but you will. And although I hate letter grades, I really hate assessment, actually, because I think it often misses the point. You're here to learn things, and hopefully you're learning things in a profession that you want to use. So don't always just go for it for the letter grade. Truly try to learn and spend your money wisely and get information. That's the whole point of college. Okay? You also, when it comes to time management, you have got to know what's coming up. If you ever walk into a test or a class and your teacher starts passing out a test and you're like, oh, I didn't know we have a test today, that's bad news bears. You don't want that to happen to you, and it does happen. It happens at a shockingly increasing rate, I feel like. Today, I had lunch, I was having lunch with my boyfriend, and we were talking about what we were like as freshmen. And I think that I would have hated him because he was a student who would come to class and fall asleep. And he was like, there were many times I walked into class and I didn't know that there was a test. He's very different now, for sure. But you don't want to do that. You don't want to be that person because it totally is not your potential. So these little magical things that you got on the first day of school called a syllabus, you should probably dig that out. And you should probably look at it because some of the best teachers, the ones that I love the most, are the ones who say, hey, this is what I expect from you this semester, just so you know. And they tell you, and they even give you due dates or tentative due dates, so you have some kind of idea when to expect things to happen. That's a very good thing. This thing called Canvas, okay, some of you freshmen, I know because you've been in my office, have not logged into Canvas. You're not very familiar with what this is, but it's this magical place where a lot of your professors, not all of them, but a lot of them will log in and they'll say when all of your assignments are due, and there's little reminders of like what's coming up. You need to know what you have coming up ahead. So you need some way to track that. And we're going to talk about little ways to track that in a little bit. Okay? You also always have to be aware of what you must do. And a lot of freshmen get this kind of stuff confused. School, going to class, is kind of a must. Going to chapel, also a must. There's this thing, it seems sort of mythical almost, but it's called sleep. It's this thing that you might not be even aware of. You have to sleep. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you have to sleep for 8 hours, but you do need rest. Okay, the good Lord made your body that way. And I think his design is pretty intelligent, if you ask me, and he typically doesn't make mistakes, so you should probably respect that. The same goes for eating. In the cafeteria, I realize it's often hard to get proper nutrition sometimes. Pizza for days. But you really need to try, because that even helps your time management. Because if you're physically not okay and you're not well, you're going to be not in the best shape. Okay? If you need to exercise, some of you have just gone your whole life and you never exercise, and you're like, whatever, I'm fine without it. Like, I would encourage you to try to do that. But if you know you don't function very well and you don't think very clearly without exerting yourself and getting that energy out, that's also a need for you. And it needs to be treated as a true need, not just a want. And it needs to be a priority. And so every day, don't lose sight of the things that you need in order to accomplish the things that you want. And that is a life skill, and that's a mature thing. And you have to prioritize, and you have to be aware of those things all the time. Another thing, I read studies all the time about students and about learning and just about our brains and how all of these processes work, and it's significant, okay, the way God made us. In every study I've ever read, it says that your brain works a lot better in the daylight hours. Now, I would argue this against it all the time in undergrad because I would not touch school stuff until curfew, and then at midnight is when I would start because I would have fun with my friends, and then I'd go to the dorm, have some more fun with my other friends, and then I'd finally start school. And it was just kind of a mess. Don't do that. Because I was truly convinced that at nighttime was when my brain turned on. And in many ways I had trained it to do that, but it was working at maybe 70 to 80% functioning when it could have been working at 100% during the daytime. And I know a lot of you are athletes, or during the daytime hours you have all of these other commitments, like you have classes or labs all day, and so that's far more difficult. But the more you can fit in during the day and treat school truly like a job, to where from 8 in the morning until 5 or 6 at night you're just doing school, the better off you'll be, and it will be far more significant for you. Sleep, again, is important. If you don't get a good night's rest, it really will affect your academic performance, 100%. For sure. Your brain just won't function, it won't recall things. And I can tell you about all of these awesome studies that have been done, but I don't think they'll have time. Nutrients, eating those kind of things is going to help you spend your time the most effectively and efficiently as you can. And you have to stay healthy. There is the nurse here in the student health office, so if you realize you're starting to get sick, which a lot of you are because it's week 4, and when we have students from like 54 countries and all 50 states coming back to hot, sweaty, muggy Arkansas in August, Harding becomes a petri dish and everyone gets sick. And it's the worst. And so you have got to take care of yourself. And if you're contagious, don't go to need to rest and make sure that you're well, or you're going to pay for it forever. Okay? And if you have time between classes, and most of you, will someone open? Okay, no, that one's good. I'm afraid these doors are locked. If you have breaks between your classes, instead of using that time to just eat a chicken biscuit or go to Einstein's or Starbucks and just hang out with friends, sometimes it might be far more advantageous for you to review the notes that you just studied in class and say, hey, I just had this class, now let me review it. It's always more helpful if you review that day and within 6 hours, if you can. And then also to preview for your classes. So if you have a class at 11 and then again at 2, in your 11 o'clock class, then you're going to go to lunch, you eat lunch, then you're going to take out your notes, bless you. You're going to take out your notes and read a little bit and say, okay, this is what we covered. So you cement it in your brain. And then you're going to take another little bit of time and pre-read for your 2 o'clock class. That way when your teacher is up there and they're talking and they're like, blah, 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 you can say, hey, I just read that. Cool, I know it. Because all these little things in your brain are like files. And the more you can review them and hear them, the more they're going to stick. And the less you actually have to cram and study. And it's super, super helpful. Okay? There are times when if you study during the day, then at nighttime you don't have to do that. Because if you have a night class, obviously you're going to have to go to class. But in the evenings, especially at Harding, that's when you want to have your social clubs and your devos and hang out with your friends and just turn on Netflix and watch 5 episodes of Parenthood. It's just what you want to do. I get that. But you're going to have to work a little bit in order to earn that. Now, never waiting. A part of never waiting is simply knowing what's ahead. Okay, so you're going to have to sort of pay attention in class when your professors are like, hey, we have a paper due. Hey, you have a test. Hey, you have a quiz. And you need to keep somewhere a running list of all those due dates so you always know what's ahead. Therefore, you're never procrastinating. Do as I say, not as I do on this one. But you can, and you will, have to write long papers in your college career most likely. Or do really big, long projects. Or take ridiculously hard tests. And if you truly wait till the night before, you're setting yourself up for failure. And what I really hope is that at Harding, it isn't just your grade that matters to you. I hope that you have such rapport and relationship with your professors that you honestly are held accountable because you don't want to disappoint them because you love and respect them so much. And honestly, that was my huge catalyst and driving force in a lot of graduate school and undergrad for me to do well. It wasn't even for myself. It was because I loved my professors so much that I didn't want to disappoint them. And if that's what motivates you to not procrastinate, to do your best, then great. Take it. Do it. But you cannot ever just study the night before an exam. And some of you may have learned that this week. It may be the first week that you've ever had a bunch of college tests and you didn't realize how much you had to prepare for them. And then you went in and you took your test and it was like a dagger in your heart and you're like, crap, I'm screwed. And then you hate college and you want to call home and you want to go home and you feel like you're going to fail all of your classes and you might be sitting here feeling really overwhelmed. Or you might say, you know what? C's get degrees, and that might be where you're at. But don't do that. Okay, inch by inch, it's a cinch. Every day, just study a little bit and focus on it a little bit, as opposed to having to do it all the night before. And you can't eat an elephant, my favorite animal. I hope you would never do that, by the way. You just have to eat one bite at a time. Okay, so all these little goals that you have, you can do them. You just have to plan and be intentional about it. And if you are falling behind, if you are already at a place this semester where you have a D or an F in a class, and you're not sure how to get out of that hole, I urge you to talk to your professor about it. Because, hopefully, they'll be more than willing to help you out and to tell you what you need to be doing in order to get out of that hole. Because amazingly, there's still time. If I were to tell you this in November, there truly may not be time to salvage yourself. And that's a stinky, stinky situation to be in. But it's early enough to where you can still raise all of your grades. And that's a very good thing. And faculty members love it. We love it when we know that our students are putting forth effort and trying. So if you were to go to Dr. Schramm, or to Dr. Russell, or to anyone, Dr. Watt, Dr. Province, and say, you know what, this is really hard for me, I'm going to the SI sessions, I'm getting tutoring, what else do you recommend for me? And they know that you're trying, they're going to be far more willing to help you out. And that's a very good thing. And at the end, if you're on that bubble, and you have a 79.4, and you could easily have a B, but you still have a C, if they know that you've been trying, chances are they're going to give you the B because they know that from the very early on you've been putting forth effort. It will never hurt you to talk to your professors. So if you're at that place, talk to them. Okay. Also, get with your classmates. I know some of you are painstakingly shy. And so the thought of trying to look around your classes when you don't know anyone at Harding, or you don't know anyone in your class, but you know you need to study with someone, is just crippling. You don't want to do that. But if you know that you study better when you're processing with other people, and you're talking about it out loud, and you're hearing other people explain it, and there's just a little bit of competition there, and you're studying together, and you need that, then you need to do what it takes to get over it. Because it's far better to get over your little bit of insecurity and possibly some pride and just ask and reach out as opposed to being so timid and so fearful and then floundering in a class when you could have been doing so much better had you only asked. Okay? So don't be so shy as to not get with your classmates. Also, the next Harding hack I think I lead is on study tips and tricks. And when you study with other people, there are a lot of really brilliant things that you can be doing with your classmates. So for example, do any of you guys have Dr. Brazil for American history? A few of you? Okay, so are any of you on the 10 o'clock? I'm teaching your class tomorrow. Sorry about it. So, yay! Double dose of crazy. So, with Dr. Brazil, for instance, I love Breeze. He's Breezola to me. He's like my fourth father. I love him. Okay? There are three others. Fourth was intentional and love him. But with Breeze, he gives you all a study guide. And that study guide, it can be a little tough and long, and the questions can sometimes be vague. But that's okay, because if you get with a classmate, and you're like, or a few classmates, and you're saying, hey, let's get a Google Doc together. You do 1 through 20. You do 21 through 40. You do 51 through 70, like whatever. Bless you. And you split them up, then you don't have to do all that work by yourself. And then you can help add on and share with other people. And that's called being resourceful. It's not cheating. It's not like you're collectively taking the test together. But you can save yourself a lot of time if you work together with other people. Now, I would want to make sure that the people you're working with are a little smart upstairs and they're not putting down the wrong answers, and you need to check them. And also don't let people mooch, because that's not advantageous or helpful for anyone. But teamwork makes the dream work. And at Harding, for a lot of these classes, if you can just collaborate and share information and then come together and knock it out, your classes are going to go so much better for you. Absolutely. Okay, the Center for Student Success. If there are some of those classes you know you are spending 3 or 4 hours studying and you still just cannot get it to sink into your head, but there's someone there who's mastered it and they're trained in helping communicate it, then I would much rather you spend an hour getting tutoring for free up in my office than spending 3 hours of your very precious and valuable time beating your head against a textbook. Okay? That's not being a good steward of your time. And in the same way, we are called to be good stewards of our talents and our money. You sincerely have got to be a good steward of your time. So if there are people there who can help you, or if there are SI sessions there who will really, truly help you do significantly better than if you never came, you need to go to those. If there's a professor who's willing to explain it, take advantage of those resources, all the ones that we talked about last week. Okay? Assemble all of your syllabi together tonight when you go back to your dorm if you already have not done this. And look and see when when all the due dates are due that you can see, or all of the projects that you have. Even if they aren't due dates, you need to have a running list of every single thing you have due in the semester. So you have these papers for this class, these tests, these quizzes, these assignments, these books to read. And I know, because I've been there, how many of you have or have had Julie Harris? Anyone? Only a few of you. Okay. She can be a little overwhelming. She's gotten a lot less overwhelming since she had a baby, so praise the Lord for baby James. But when I had her, whoa, the struggle was real. And I had her 5 times. I almost have a minor Julie Harris. So you can feel sorry for me, it's fine. But I love her. But the amount of work that her classes required was shocking. And so one semester I had her for 2 classes. Masochist, me. And I would have to list out everything I had to do. And it took 3 sheets of paper, typed, to list everything I had to do that semester for my classes. And at first I wanted to cry, but I didn't because I don't do that very well. But I wanted to, which is saying a lot. And I put it in as much chronological order as I could. And I got so much satisfaction when I was able to cross things off. And I was able to look ahead and say, you know what, this next week is going to be the worst. And part of that was just awful, but it would have been far more awful if I avoided it. So that Friday night before then, I would go to Little Rock and have fun with my friends, and it would be great. And then I knew I just had to hunker down for the weekend because the next week coming up, according to my list, was going to be rough. But it always let me know what was happening ahead. And I could always also, especially after around October, look back and see all that I had already accomplished. And that was always really, really encouraging to me. And the best students I know go ahead and they look at everything that they have to do. So whether it's in your syllabi or on Canvas, you need to do that, okay? If you know in a single week you have a whole lot to do, the year after I graduated from undergrad, I took a break between undergrad and graduate school. And I just was the director of SI, I taught for Upward Bound, and I was also the director of tutoring that year. I was only 22. And I just was dumped in the water and I felt like I was drowning. And so every single morning I would wake up and I put a Post-it note on the back of my phone, I taped it there, and it was just a list of everything I knew I needed to accomplish that day. That was like my archaic method of managing my time. Because I didn't have a Google Calendar, I didn't keep a written calendar, but I would have like one Post-it note for the week saying, Stephanie, this is what you have to do this week. And then another Post-it note for the day. And that is how I lived for like 2 years. But it helped me because I always had my phone on me, always. And then I could just look at it real quick and I didn't have to like log into it. This is before I could just put my thumb there and log into my phone. But I could just look and say, oh yes, this is what I need to do. So if even something so simple like that would help you, so you can just take a glance and you always know what you have coming, you really need to do that, okay? If you know that you oversleep and you hit snooze, I hit snooze all the time. My alarm went off at 5:15 this morning. I was not cerebrally functioning or cognizant until 5:33 after my 3rd alarm went off because I'm a snoozer. But I don't sleep through things. And if you do sleep through things, and I know many of you have already slept through some of your 8 o'clock classes or slept through chapel, you really need to download an app which does not let you do that. There are a lot of them where you have to do like a math problem, or you have to do like a little brain teaser, a little puzzle in order to get up. Do that. They're actually kind of fun. If you know that that isn't going to work and you're just too smart for that business, you probably need to put your phone across the room and physically have to get up unless your roommate's going to murder you, in which case I don't recommend that. But you have to get up. Okay, so if you know that that's a struggle of yours, you can do something about it. Okay, you also need to share your time management schedules, and we're going to talk about a schedule here in a second, with your significant others or your parents or your roommates. You have to do stuff like that. Okay, and they can hold you accountable. And you need to give them permission to hold you accountable. So if I were to say, hey Stephanie, here's my schedule, please hold me accountable, If she knows that I'm supposed to be studying for my techniques of counseling class that I already taken between this time, and she texts me, first of all, if she texts me and I respond immediately, that's going to be a no because I shouldn't have my phone on me. Secondly, if she's like, hey, did you do that? And I was like, oh no, it was just so pretty outside. I decided to just sit and look at the birds. Then she, if I give her permission, she'll be like, Stephanie, no. You have so much more potential than this. You can do so much better, or she can be a lot meaner. But how can hold you accountable? That's perfectly okay. Another thing, although I always have my phone on me, if you're sitting there with your textbooks or your homework, or you're sitting in class, you are not studying and you are not paying attention if you're doing this. You know what I'm saying? That is so distracting. Or you may be perfectly in the zone and writing your paper or reading your textbook or reviewing your notes, but the moment this sucker vibrates, or you hear a little ding, or a light flashes, your brain goes whoop, and you've lost all of your concentration, and you're far more focused on what this is telling you. I am a therapist. Therefore, I am truly bound to this phone. It doesn't leave my presence, and I get it, and it is very hard for me to put it away. And I have had to set boundaries with myself during certain times for it to not even be around me, because my brain will just leave whoever I'm with or whatever I'm doing and totally focus on whatever is on the other end of this. While being here, I have received, in this last hour, 14 text messages. And then my brain, like if I were to, like, and I'm trying not to let that distract me, because some of those I know are people who need my help right now. And that's hard. And if I were studying, there's no way I would be focused on studying, because I'd be like, I thought I was respond to this. Okay, and some of them are just friends and I want to respond to them. But I can't because I'm leading a seminar, in the same way that when you're studying, you cannot, because you're doing what you're here to do. Just get an education. So put away your cell phone from time to time. And you can also, on your laptop or your computer, set up different software that will truly block you out of certain websites if you want it to block you out during certain times. Some of my employees have started doing this, and it's made a huge difference. And I love that for them, because Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all of these things can really be suckers of your time, and you truly don't have time for that. Okay? Utilize a planner. If you have a smartphone, you either have like the Google Planner. I have Google Planner on mine. I have an Apple. And I'll just show you from a distance, because you can't see it from far. I'm not sure if you can see this at all. But truly, every hour of my day, almost, is planned on here. Those are all my meetings and all of my obligations that I have to do in the week. And the very rare white space is happy time. There's not much happy time in my life, but that's okay. It's good. It's good. It's karma for not managing my time before. But I don't really believe in karma, for the record. But you need to do something. If it's your Harding planner that we gave you when you came as a freshman, if it's a Google Calendar, use that. I like this as opposed to a written calendar, because I always have this with me. So when I'm at Walmart, like I was the other day, and a student comes up to me and they're like, I need to come to your office, I can just look and say, okay, that'll be in 2 weeks. That's the next time I have time for you. Just really sad, but at least I know. And that's helpful. But you have to dictate your time. And another thing about using a Google Calendar is that more and more professions, more and more companies and corporations and schools, I require all of my graduate assistants and counseling interns to use Google Calendar. And it's become more and more of an anticipated skill. Sort of like we expect you to know how to run the internet and to like use the internet. 20 years ago, that would have been like, what? You expect me to use the internet? But now it's sort of like assumed common sense. Being able to use Google Calendar or other scheduling apps is becoming more and more common sense. And so while you're in college, it would behoove you to learn how to do that. Okay, I'm going to have Sarah pass around. Stephanie, would you mind helping her pass these out? You're the best participant volunteer. Sheets of paper, and they look like grids because they are. And we're going to talk about something. So typically, when I am meeting with students, or my academic counselors are meeting with students, and they really struggle with time management, We'll talk about a lot of these things, but we'll actually get down to the point and make a true time management schedule with it. Now, to do this with over 100 people at once is borderline impossible. Also, I prefer to do it with lots of different color markers and pins and separate things by color. But I just want to show you all how to do this so you know. And typically for most students, it's really beneficial because you all do not even realize how long a 24-hour day is. And this little graph that I've given you, that's not 24 hours because I've done something here. I've assumed that you're going to sleep. So it ends at 11 o'clock at night, which I know you're not going to bed at 11 o'clock, but I'm hoping by 11 o'clock you can be done with school stuff. And then it starts early in the morning, okay? Which is great. So the first thing you need to do on this calendar is take it and go ahead and mark in when you have class. So if you have American history at 9 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you need to go ahead on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and mark in that you have history. If you have chemistry or chem lab or Bible, all of these things, you go in and you write when you have all of your classes. Hopefully by now you're sort of familiar with your schedule. If you need to look it up, that's fine. But marking your classes first because you kind of have to go to those. And make sure you don't miss any labs or any evening classes. But you fill in your classes first. So you can see, okay, this is when I have class. And I would typically do those in one color. And you can also, you need to put in chapel. It's kind of required. Do you have a question?
Early in the year, schedule.
Oh, man. They save the best for last. I'm sorry. They sat a little bit closer. Okay, so once you filled in your classes and chapel, okay, because remember we're going to do the must first, and I've already assumed the must of sleeping because the hours that you should be asleep, bless you, are not even on your calendar. Next, I want you to go ahead and put in when you typically eat. I know not all of you eat breakfast, but if you do eat breakfast, you need, and like you actually go to the cafe and eat breakfast as opposed to like grab a granola bar on the way to chapel, you need to put that on there. You need to eat lunch, and you also need to eat dinner. And so this does not mean every single day at 6 o'clock you have to eat dinner. But if around 6 o'clock you eat dinner, I want you to allocate for that hour of time. So you can see, you know what, I actually do have an hour for dinner and for my friends. So next, you go ahead and put when you eat, because eating is important. And if you exercise, and that is super important to you, and you know that you need to do it every day, this is where you also go ahead and put where you need to exercise. I personally recommend either exercising first thing in the morning, that's what I do. That's why I wake up at 5:15/5:33 when I finally wake up. Or exercising after your last class every day. That way you just give your brain time to just stop and turn off again. And you just sort of sweat out all of the stuff and your tension from being in class all day. But exercising really late at night, I know a lot of students really love to do that and it's great. But you do release a lot of endorphins that way, and it does make it typically, for most people, physiologically harder to fall asleep. So there are exceptions to that. And so if you're like, hey, I go running at 10 and I go to bed at 11, like that's great for you. But for most people, that doesn't work that well. So either if you do want to exercise, or if you've never made that a priority, but you want it to be a priority, that's where you put that. And then you have to type in your other commitments. And by type in, I mean write in. So if you are in a club or if you're wanting to join a club, that's Monday nights at 9 every other week. And even though it's bi-weekly, you go ahead and you put it on your calendar because it's half the weeks. Okay, if you have church on Sunday morning and you go to Bible class and you go to church service and you typically go to lunch afterwards, you need to block off that time on Sunday. If you go to downtown singing service on Sunday night, or if you go to sanctuary on Monday night, you need to write those things down. If you're a part of an organization, or if you're going to go to the organizational fair today and you're going to realize you are going to be a part of an organization and they meet at midnight oil at 7 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, which some of them do, you need to write that down. Okay? And if you're an athlete, when you have practice, you got to write those things down. Okay, anything that's sort of weekly. Or even if you have like a standing Skype date with your mom, or a FaceTime date with your boyfriend from back home, or whatever, something that is regularly scheduled, you go ahead and put that on there. My sincere hope when you're looking at your calendar right now is that you realize you still have a lot of white space. I do this, until this year I was, the chief counselor for all of the College of Pharmacy and Physical Therapy and PA and the Graduate Health Sciences. And their schedules are impossible sometimes. They're so hard. But we would always figure it out. And so I know, looking at your schedule, if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, I know that there's time for everything, even if we do spend 2 hours for every 1 hour you're in class. So now is the hard part. Well, there's one more fun thing. I want you to always, consistently, either block off Friday night or Saturday night from like 5 forward or 6 forward, just for you to have fun. To go and hang out with your friends, or to watch movies, or to do whatever. And it doesn't have to be the same night. And as freshmen, you'll probably be able to have both nights. But when you get to be an upper level student, there's going to be a lot of weekends when you're just going to get one weekend night and then the rest is studying. I promise. I'm sorry. But if you get in the habit of always giving yourself one night for just true fun, that's a good thing, okay? So do that. At least block off. And so on my calendar it says Stephanie time. And that's time for me to do whatever I want with it. And that's a good thing, okay? Now is the hard part. You first have to decide if it is better for you to review before class, or to review after class, or to spend 1 hour reviewing before you go to class and 1 hour after a class. That might have sounded really confusing. Some students, though, do a lot better when they review their 2 hours after they've gone to class. Some students split up those 2 hours. But it's sort of like figuring out a puzzle. And if this is something you're really interested in committing to doing and just trying to set a schedule and hold yourself accountable, I truly encourage you to come up to the Center for Student Success and either meet with myself or one of the graduate assistants. It'd be quicker if you met with a graduate assistant. And they're all trained in helping figure out how to do this for you. But you can tell your time where to go. In the same way, when one day you're all going to make these awesome salaries and you're going to have real money, and you'll be so much better if you tell your money where to go and you budget it, and then there's actually a lot of freedom there. If you were to write down all of the times you actually had to study and you stuck to it, and every day you did it a little inch by inch, because it's a cinch, and you studied a little bit every single day, you wouldn't ever have to cram that much for a big exam, because you would already have retained so much of it. And also when you graduate, it's going to be easy for you because you're going to be like, wow, I actually remembered a lot of the things that I learned instead of just cramming it in and then it going away immediately. And there's a lot of value in that. So if you were to be disciplined and try to study 30 hours a week, sounds like a lot because it is. It would be worthwhile, and you'll actually realize you have so much more free time than you ever realize. It just takes some discipline, and it takes you actually acknowledging how you spend your time and using it wisely in order to do that. So come by the Center for Student Success if you need some help there. Manage your time wisely. You'll enjoy Harding a whole lot better if you do. And Sarah and I will meet you at the top with the certificates.